All right, Linda, I'm so psyched to be with you here again for the third time interviewing you.
I'm delighted to be here with you, Cheryl.
Awesome. And you have so much to say about the art of listening. It's almost like, where do we begin? And so, what I want to throw out there is what I want to start with is how to shift people from listening from a place of righteousness or listening from a place of assuming they know what's happening with their partner to what would be the alternative, curiosity.
Great question. If we stop to think about how incredibly important, deep, committed listening is, that's where people get the motivation to watch the way in which they communicate and see if they come up short in their listening. That maybe they get bored easily, maybe they interrupt, maybe they sit in judgment of what the other person is saying. And if you see that those are working against you in having a great relationship with a high level of trust and a high level of respect, that's where the motivation comes, to check ourselves out, to see if we have weak suits in that area. And then when the motivation is in place, people will very naturally bring the attitude of curiosity and wonder to every communication they have, particularly with the people they're closest to.
And perhaps not just, what I think most importantly with listening, perhaps not just curiosity and wonder about your partner. And we're speaking here about partners because you work primarily with married people. Is that accurate?
Couples in committed partnership who may or may not be married. You know, marriage is going out of vogue these days, but people are living together and having kids together and buying homes together, but they don't necessarily think marriage is in the cards for them. So we say we're working with people primarily who are in committed partnerships, who want to have them be as great as they can be. And this listening skill, mastering the fine art of listening and becoming a black belt in listening, is what's going to lift their relationship to the higher realms. And you're right, it isn't just for couples. It's for anybody who has got an important relationship with us. Our kids, our parents, our siblings, our best friends, you know, people on the job. That same refinement will enhance relationships across the board.
And it's not just the wonder and curiosity of the person or partner that you're speaking to, but wonder and curiosity of the self. Where are we listening from?
Absolutely. If you can go deeper in your communication with your significant people in your life, you learn so much about yourself, not just about the other person. But people speak kind of offhandedly. You know, they speak, a lot of people speak in a very superficial way. How you doing? You know, I'm fine. And how do you think the ball team is doing? Do you know? Oh, they're having a great season, or they're having a crummy season. And the feeling level, those issues that have a heart and meaning for us, you know, that's the kind of listening that bonds people and that enhances their relationship, because they're relating on a level that is deep, you know, and it's not just the kind of chit chat that we have with people who aren't significant to us. We want to make sure that the people who are valued by us get it. And there's ways that we can speak to them so they get it. There's ways we can behave with them that they get it. But there's also ways that we don't speak, but we really show up and they get how much we value them just with that depth of listening.
That is such a beautiful point. I don't think that I've even touched on that in this series so far, which is the value of silence. and also how much is being communicated in the silence, that we don't actually always have to have an answer. This person says one thing, I say another thing, then they say another thing, then I say another thing, that we actually can be silent, and also the act of listening happens, like real listening happens in the silence, when you can be silent, hear what the other person is saying, hear the interpretation that you're having of what the other person is saying. So silence doesn't just lend a hand to listening to the other person, but it lends a hand to us listening to ourselves.
And there can be a lot of distortion that goes on between when it leaves their mouth and it gets into our ears, and into our mind. We may be a bit off base with what we're thinking they're communicating with us. So I think those silent pauses that you're referring to are incredibly important. And I will be grateful all my days to Sylvia Boorstein for giving me a term that I can describe the method of slowing down the rate of exchange. When I heard her speak at Spirit Rock in Marin County in California, and she gave me the term talking meditation. Because I had been meditating for a long time, but I'm such an extrovert and I'm so relational that it was a hardship for me, as it is for a lot of people, to sit in silent meditation for long periods of time every day. And as I learned about spiritual practice, I saw there's so many ways that we can accomplish the same goal, and talking meditation. When I heard that, man, I lit up. I wanted to sing a hallelujah chorus because I love interacting with people and communicating with people. And of course, my husband's my favorite. He's my best friend, and I find him so interesting. And I talked with him about talking meditation. It's just slowing down the speed at which we speak and having contemplative pauses between the delivering our message. Let them take a time to take it in and be with it, feel into it before they bring their communication to us. And then we feel into that. And it tends to be a deeper level of communication with, as I said before, more heart meaning. You drop below the superficial relating. And that enhances our self-awareness, our self-confidence, our self-trust. And the people that we're speaking with that way, they feel so honored. We're really showing up. My one of my meditation teachers is Jack Cornfield, and he talks about the sign in the casino that says you must be present to win. You must be present to win. And when you slow down the rate of speed of exchange in your communication, you're listening very deeply and you're more fully present. And that's when you have the chance to win the jackpot of having terrific relationships with all the important people in your life.
And I think that what can get caught in that silent meditation, in that like talking meditation or receiving silently, letting it land, is you get to catch what you're assuming, like what you assume they meant, because oftentimes a really powerful filter of distortion is assuming, right? So somebody will say something and then we are responding to what we assume they meant.
And it works so well when you take time to be with it that you might wonder whether what you're hearing is really what they intended. And you're more apt to not just talk past your assumption and just assume that you're right, but you're more apt to say, this is what I think you're communicating to me. Am I on target? Or tell me more about that. Or did I get it right? So you're checking out the nuances, the subtleties. So it's a fuller communication than it would have been if you were just taking what you thought they said or what you thought they meant.
So, tell me about your Psychology Today article. You were saying that you had written this. Let me know if I misquote you. That you had written this article about listening, and it was perhaps the most read or attended to blog because of the thirst of people wanting to be better listeners, to learn how to listen. So can you tell me about that? Because I'm geeking out so much on listening right now, and I want to just pump out as much education about listening because we're not taught how to listen. And I feel like our entire experience of life perhaps is created by how we listen.
You're right. It's a big part of life and it doesn't get the attention that it deserves. And so when I post the blogs on Psychology Today, I don't know which ones are going to be the really popular ones, but we got a massive amount of hits. We called it Black Belt Listening.
Mhm.
And it's got a list of how to become black belt in listening. I'll give you a few of the examples. One is to designate time and that you make it sacred time. You're not talking while you're emptying the dishwasher, washing dishes, or the kids are tumult all over the house. You don't have any screens open. You're really with each other. It's better if you don't answer the phone. You're really fully present. And my husband and I, we work with couples a lot who are in trouble. And this is revolutionary thought to them that they need to designate time to deal with the issues
Mhm.
and to enjoy each other too. People's lives are so full, they're so busy. So it's been one of the gifts of the pandemic. People have had more time together if they're really using it to designate time to deal with whatever needs to be dealt with. So that's one of the tips. Once a week, I believe, is minimum. More is better. My husband and I've been having daily check-ins for long, 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 long time, decades now. And we wouldn't live without them because once you get used to keeping on top of all the issues and not having anything incomplete, there's no going back. You start to see how precious it is. One of the other things is to take the time to understand and ask clarifying questions. It's such a way to show respect of the other person. A lot of us come from families where the kids weren't listened to enough, or maybe the girls weren't listened to enough, or maybe there were too many kids in the family and the older kids got listened to and the younger kids got neglected. Or maybe the older kids were in charge of the younger kids and the younger kids got listened to more. But a lot of us, I hear it all the time over the years I've been doing counseling. I just want to feel seen and heard. And it's a source of pain for them that nobody's really shown up fully to embrace them and who they are with our magnificence and our weak suits, and that we can be ourselves. And so when you designate time and you have that kind of an agreement with somebody, could be a dear friend, it could be a romantic partner, that you're going to be there with each other and for each other, and you're going to really show up. That's one of the important parts of becoming a black belt listener, that you learn how to use self-discipline so you don't interrupt and you don't cut the conversation short. You say things like, tell me more about that. Is there more you'd like to say about that? What are your associations with that? And to really take the time. We often find when we're working with couples, they don't take the time to deeply communicate with each other that is required to have a great relationship. And
Perhaps do you think that one thing that may interrupt somebody from taking the time to listen and having that strain of curiosity questions What's that like for you? What does that feel like for you? Like really, really getting into the colors and contours and dimensions of what the other person is saying. What may stop that flow is taking something personally, right? All of a
Absolutely.
sudden, we're listening through a filter of taking it personally. And
And
then
we,
our listening, go ahead.
we're very easily wounded.
Mm,
We all come to the conversations with sore spots. So we may take it the wrong way. We may feel that they're criticizing us. They actually might be criticizing us. And that's one of the things that helps you become a better communicator is when you have an agreement in place that if I say something that hurts you or upsets you or frightens you, I want feedback. I want you to tell me. Because if I'm banging into some sore spot, I want to know that. Not that I can necessarily always avoid your sore spots, but I do want to know you at that level so that I can be careful and I can understand why you're tender in this area.
mhm.
We all have them.
So amazing. So there's taking it personally. There's also what I think you pointing to, which is inherited listening. So if there's like a style of listening from your childhood home that we've adopted, right? So we've either adopted the way our parents listened to us, or we adopted some um, what would you call it? Uh, Defense mechanism or something
Yes.
to or an identity around the way in which we were trying to get heard, something like that. I heard in what you were saying, but
The
maybe
defensive styles
mm,
that some of us had to adopt just to get through our childhood.
mm,
Some of us had to fly below the radar. We might have spent a lot of time in our room, or we might have stayed after school as long as we could. We might have stayed in our friends' homes because it wasn't really safe, in our homes. I'm not saying that they would necessarily physically harm us, although some people had physical and emotional harm happen in their families. But not every child gets to grow up in a family that they deserve to be cherished and honored. And tell me about your day, sweetheart. And what's your favorite teacher? And what's your favorite subject? And who are your friends? And why are they your best friends? And why is that your favorite subject? Sometimes our parents were so preoccupied with their own life. I don't mean to put any blame on parents. They're doing the best they could. They may not have got good communication skills modeled from their family and never learned it. They may be preoccupied with their own issues, and they weren't really there to hear us as children. But that desire to be heard, to be known, to be loved as is, with our mixed bag self, with our glorious self and our not so glorious self. We always want that. That little child that's hungry for it doesn't ever grow up. And so when we can have people in our life and we do it for them, that we really show up with them, that we validate and acknowledge their signature strengths, we're willing to be honest, that we both have weak suits. It's a good contract to have, that we will tell the truth to each other without blame and judgment, and that we will support each other to evolve as we learn out of our good conversations, the meat on the bones conversations.
yeah. So perhaps mastering the art of listening, if that's what we want to call it, is the biggest gift you can give to somebody. It's
You're
what
right.
they've been waiting for since they were children. Here, just hear me. Just give me the space to get this out and say it's okay and validate it and understand all the colors and shapes of what I'm experiencing.
That's exactly right. If we want to have an intimate relationship, that's innermost, into me see,
Mm,
then we need to create the kind of a safety, atmosphere of safety, where we can bring forth our innermost self, our fears, our insecurities, our wildest dreams for our life, our big agenda of what we like to accomplish and experience and contribute in this world. the love we want to give and receive. You need an atmosphere of safety, a context of safety to reveal these very tender feelings. I sometimes get really angry. I sometimes want to pull his hair out by the roots. I sometimes want to run away from home. We all have our things that we feel a little embarrassed to reveal, and how incredible a blessing it is, even to have one person, but more is better, that we could reveal it all. We don't have to be closeted about any of the neurotic thoughts that we have, or some of our little strange behaviors that we feel might be embarrassing if people knew. It's so um, enlivening, a sense of freedom to have even one person in your life that you can be completely yourself with,
Mm.
and that they won't judge you and say, "Oh my God, that's too much," or "You too little," or "You too much." Do you know that they have made room for their own shadowy parts, the dark shadow and the golden shadow? So there's room for other. Do you know that we can reveal more and conceal less, and
Mm.
be loved as is? We don't have to be perfect.
That's amazing. You're like a wealth of beautiful ideas, and I want to make sure that I get to everything on the list here. Oh, I don't think we've covered your concept of high impact listening.
I learned this from my friend Bill Galt. He, as a younger man, was really righteous and judgmental, but he knew it, and he got plenty of feedback from people about how he wounded them. And he made up his mind that he was going to break that habit, and he wanted to become a champion listener. So he used the term high impact listening. He traveled a lot for his job, so he was thrown in with all kinds of people, and he flew a lot. So he was on planes, and he was an extrovert like me, so he'd get into conversation with people on the plane. And invariably, they would be very different from him. And his immediate impulse, because he was kind of an anger type and judgmental, his impulse would be, "That jerk, that dope." And he would consciously override it. And high impact listening for him was to get over himself, rein himself in with his judgmental mind, and graduate out of being a judgment machine. And he practiced this diligently over time, and he became a very loving man. He would talk to people. He gave me this example about being on a plane with somebody, and the man had guns, and Bill was against guns. He didn't own a gun. He never touched a gun. He didn't hunt. He didn't. And his first impulse would to say, "That's destructive, hostile. Why would you want to kill a deer?" And he got over himself. He practiced high impact listening, and he listened to the man, looking for common ground. Instead of playing an us and them game, he came from, "We're all us. We all want to be safe. We all want to protect our family." And the more deeply he listened, the more he felt love and appreciation for the man. And he was just like Bill, wanted to protect his family, and he felt guns were important to have in the house to do that. And he he really was committed to the practice. So I find his way of being to be exemplary, because we tend to do the same old habituated patterns until we become conscious that they're not serving us. He was pushing too many other people away with his righteous judgments. When he committed to finding common ground, he always found it.
So high impact listening is listening for the common ground.
Yes, getting away from being a judgment machine, being
Listen,
more
listening,
open.
listening for connection.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Such an important key that is, listening for connection. Because we can filter we can not even notice the connection because of whatever gets caught in our ears about what we don't like, or what has us feel unsafe, or what has us take us personally. So our filters catch all this crappy stuff and then completely overlook and siphon out the connective tissue of the conversation.
Yes, that's exactly right. And if we make a firm commitment to become a champion, committed listener, we will find the ways to do that. It's a little different for different people. For everybody, I think they need the designated time to practice because it's a skill.
Mm.
And you need to practice, practice, practice if you're going to get your skill level. If you're going to learn a foreign language, you need to practice, practice, practice. If you're going to learn to play the guitar or the flute or the drums, you need to practice, practice, practice. And sometimes people underestimate that to get terrific at relationship skills, you need to practice, practice, practice. And just like when you're learning to play a musical instrument, you're playing that violin and sometimes it sounds really screechy and it isn't beautiful. But if you stay with it, you could get to make beautiful music. And so it's always this process of fall down, get up, learn from the mistakes, begin again. Just don't quit. Just stay with your intention and your commitment, and you will learn. You will learn from your mistakes. You will learn from the feedback that people give you if you cause harm to them, if they feel judged, if you didn't communicate in a way well enough for it to be received by them. And then you will notice the things that work and you do more of those, and the things that don't work. If you're distracted and you're turning away, or you're self-centered and you've got to have the limelight and you get some feedback, we need feedback. You see, I need to ask more questions and I need to shut up more and listen better and stop trying to put my opinions or give my advice. That can be very destructive to relationship when given advice and you set yourself up as the high and mighty know-it-all, rather than asking questions that are designed for the person to discover what's true for them.
Brilliant. We have a few more minutes. Is there anything else that you want to point to and discuss that we haven't yet touched?
The part that is most important is for people to understand how bountiful the bonanza of benefits is when you do this work. I feel if they understood, they'd be knocking themselves out to do the practices to master the art of good listening, because people want to be happy and they sometimes don't connect the dots that you get the most happiness from your closest relationships. They're spending a lot of their precious time and energy making a living, accumulating wealth. Of course, that's important. But the research of the positive psychology researchers is very consistent. There's the same amount of happy and unhappy people after you get out of subsistence level in every economic group. So if people were devoting more of their time and attention to mastering good skills in relationship, good communication skills, good negotiation skills, good conflict management, and good listening, their lives would improve. They would feel rich. They would feel like they didn't need to knock themselves out over working to make all that money because they already have this fabulous life already. But we're in a very competitive, materialistic society, and our culture really wants to use us in the machine to do that. And so you have to be pretty conscious not to go at effect of the prevailing cultural view and be a stand for, I want my relationships to be magnificent, and I'm going to do my work. I'm going to become such a terrific communicator, the way I speak, that people can receive me, and the way I listen, that the people know that I'm getting them. And their life would be so much better. Then they'd find the motivation to do this work.
It's so beautiful. I love and so powerful the way you say that it's actually a commitment. It's actually a commitment to learning something brand new, listening.
Yeah.
It
And
takes
and it's not all that new. It's not something that's so far out of the frame of reference, because everybody has moments where they were a terrific listener and they did feel the trust and the respect go up. It's just doing more of what really works intentionally. I don't want people to be scared that this is some rocket science. It's not. You know, you lean in, you give them your attention, you look them in the eye, you ask questions. It's not rocket science, but it does take making a conscious decision on a daily basis to really show up and listen well.
amazing. Let me make sure that I got everything. Um, um, the only other thing that I want to highlight, which we already touched on, is part of the art of listening is we touched on it. We were talking about assuming that you are then speaking perhaps the gist of what you thought the person said. How important that is. I know you and I spoke about it in our pre-interview call a week or so ago. How important it is to actually give a verbal reflection. Is this what you said? And you're giving that reflection because you think, I'm not quite sure. Either I'm not quite sure what they said, or I'm making all these interpretations. So let me just reflect back on what I think they said and how important that piece in listening is.
It's incredibly important. Do you remember the game we used to play when we were kids called telephone?
Yeah.
And by the time it would get to the end of the line, after 20 kids had whispered it in the ear, it sometimes hardly resembled the way it began. And that's how a lot of communication is, that a person speaks, they assume that the other person got what they meant, and the other person was preoccupied. Maybe they had thoughts in their mind, that they weren't paying close enough attention. They just got a little bit of it. And then they they embroidered on the little bit that they got something that they made up that was really distorted. And this happens all the time with people who think they communicated one message, and the message that the other person got was like the kids playing telephone and hardly resembled what was said. So to really show up, to really pay attention, to paraphrase what I heard you saying was, check it out. Did I get it right? No, but not make the other person wrong that they didn't get it right. To take responsibility for we may not have phrased it in a way that it could land on them and they could take it in. Let me do a do-over here. What I really meant is I was really disappointed that we had a plan for date night and you forgot.
Mm.
And what you heard was you're a bad husband because I forgot date night. No, I'm not saying you're a bad husband. I think you're a terrific husband. And these date nights are really important to me. I want to get out of this house. The pandemic is coming to a close now. I've been hibernating here for 14 months, and I really want us to get back to date night. And I know we haven't done it for a while, but I want to put that back in our routine. And it has nothing to do with you being a bad husband. It has to do with how much I dig you and how much I'm into you and how much I enjoy you. And I want us to have some romantic time together without anybody around. And I think we're going to be able to communicate and hear each other and listen better on those date nights. And I'm committed to that. And so, did you hear me this time?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You don't think I'm a bad husband. You think I'm a good husband, and you want to reinstate date night because it's important to you. I heard you this time, and it's important to me too.
Mhm.
You hear the connection,
Totally.
the sweetness of it,
Yeah.
but they had to go off the road to get back on.
Yeah, and go beyond the initial taking it personally or making it mean something worse about them, and then, you know, feeling that, noticing it, and then going into the recreation step.
That's right.
Awesome. Well, we're complete. Linda, I love working with you. I appreciate your commitment to people and making people happy and training people and healing people. You're just such a vibrant soul. I appreciate you. And we're going to be sending people your Psychology Today article, the link to all of your ebooks. I think that's everything. We're
That's
sending
good.
people to get in touch with you. Yeah.
I want people to have the free ebooks
Yeah.
because there's one about sexuality, one about conflict, and one about the 10 most important things that we've learned since we got married, my husband and I. And they all refer to the incredible importance of listening. All the ebooks mention the importance of that.
Yeah. Amazing. All right. So
Okay.
many ways of getting this listening out there, just more and more ways. Awesome.
I so appreciate that you chose this topic for your listening audience because I do think it's a neglected topic and it's so important. It's so essential. When people think about becoming a better communicator, they think about the messages that they deliver. And of course, that is so important, but so is being a gracious receiver. And the listening is the other part of the equation of being a terrific communicator.
Absolutely. So well put. All right. Thanks, Linda. Thanks, everybody, for listening. See you next time. Happy healing, and life is now. Bye.
Bye bye.